नमस्कार. आयच्या ह्या खाशेल्या डिबेटात तुमकां सगळ्यांक येवकार. विशय आसा तो एनवायरमेंट डिग्रेडेशन दीस फार नो फर्दर. आनी इतलो विशाल आनी व्हडलो विशय डिस्कस करपा खातीर पॅनलय तितलेंच व्हडलें आसा. 8 मानेस्त आसा म्हजे बरोबर. हांव फटाफट तांची वळख करून दिता. पयलीं आसात ते म्हळ्यार लेखक, एक्टिविस्ट, इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट आनी हावजिंगा भितर तांकां भरपूर एक्सपिरियन्स आसा ते दत्तबाब नायक. स्वागत तुमचें. दुसरे आसात म्हजे बरोबर ते दोतोर, एक्टिविस्ट आनी ते मदीक पॉलिटिशनय जाल्ले ते डॉक्टर ऑस्कर रेबेलो. तिसरी आसात म्हजे बरोबर ते टुरिजम इंडस्ट्री भितर जांणी फक्त काम करनात पण टुरिजम इंडस्ट्री वाडची आनी ती बरी उरची म्हूण सतत विचार करतात ते राल्फ बाब डिसोजा. स्वागत. चवथी आसात ते म्हजे बरोबर एनवायरमेंटलिस्ट आरोन बाब लोबो. स्वागत. पांचवे आसात ते म्हजे बरोबर इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट आनी GCCIचे आदले अध्यक्ष नितीन बाब कुंकळकार. 6वी आसात ते म्हजे बरोबर एक्टिविस्ट सलमन परेरा. स्वागत. 7वी आसात ते म्हजे बरोबर फॉमेंतोचे जे मायनिंग फांटो आहा पळयतात ते पार्थो बॅनर्जी. स्वागत. आनी लास्ट बट नॉट द लिस्ट आमचे बरोबर पत्रकार, एक्टिविस्ट आनी लेखक संदेश बाब प्रभुदेसाय. हांव सुरवात दत्तबाब तुमचे वयल्यानच करता कारण तुमी एक्टिविस्टय बी, तुम्ही लेखकय बी, सो ती संवेदनशीलतेनूय तुम्ही एक विशया कडेन पळयतात आनी तुमी खंय तरी उद्देजक आनी बिझनेसमॅनय बी. जेन्ना आमी एनवायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन दीस फार नो फर्दर म्हणटात, हॅव वी रीच्ड दॅट पॉयंट ऑफ नो फर्दर? हाव आर यू लुकिंग एट दिस?
प्रमोद, हांव एज ए हंबल स्टुडंट ऑफ इकॉनॉमिक्स, अर्थशास्त्राचो एक विद्यार्थी ह्या नात्यान जेन्ना पळय हांव एनवायरमेंटा कडेन पळयता, पर्यावरण, तेन्ना मातसो हांव होलिस्टीक नदरेन पळयता. जेन्ना आमी एनवायरमेंटाचे उलयतात तेन्ना आमी चड करून पॉझिटिव्हली बायस टुवर्ड नॅचरल रिसोर्सीस, रायटली सो. पूण म्हजे दृश्टीन, अर्थशास्त्राचो विद्यार्थी ह्या दृश्टीन म्हाका दिसता की आमी ज्या वाठारांत आमी रावतात त्या वाठारांतले पळय नागरीक आसात तांची सोशो इकॉनॉमीक लायफूय तितलेंच गरजेचें. त्या दृश्टीन म्हाका दिसता की पॉवर्टी इज वर्स्ट कायंड ऑफ सोशल पोल्युशन आनी पॉवर्टीचें प्रायम रिजन इज अनएम्प्लॉयड. म्हणून जेन्ना म्हाका एनवायरमेंटलाचे, नॅचरल रिसोर्सीसाची जेन्ना पळय डिप्लेशन आनी वायट दिसता, तशेंच जेन्ना पॉवर्टी, अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट, आज हांवें इंटरव्यू घेतलो कितले 51 भुरगे, हांव एक 2-3 जॉब दिवपाक शकता. म्हणटकीर हें करतना आमी एक अशें चॅलेंज घेवपाक जाय की आमची इंडस्ट्री, आमचें हावजींग, सर्वीस सॅक्टर कशें वाडटलें, एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन कशी जातली, वेल्थ आनी रेवेन्यू कसो जातलो, हेंय तितलेंच गरजेचें अशें म्हाका दिसता जर आमी एनवायरमेंटांत ह्युमन बिईंग हो एक भाग घेतलो. हें म्हाका सुरवेक सांग.
दोतोर, कितें दिसता? नो फर्दर, वी हॅव रीच्ड दॅट पॉयंट ऑफ नो फर्दर.
I think that is, in many ways, some kind of a red line or a finite line, and people are going to break that line. My argument goes beyond that. What we are doing, and we are seeing this in Goa also, we are trying to emulate the American model of development, which is basically extreme consumerism, extreme materialism, the extreme McDonaldization of the entire state and the entire country. So everything has to look one, put up skyscrapers, put up flyovers, put up airports, put up all the infrastructure possible. And that's going to run your economy. I think we've got to do a rethink. Europe does it a little better, where they probably have certain areas which are meant for this kind of economic growth, so economic engines. So you have financial centers in London, you have financial centers in Frankfurt, you have industry in Switzerland, etc. But they also use their heritage. America doesn't have a heritage. America is completely a useless country, and it's a terrible model to emulate. But Europe is one where it markets its heritage, it markets its environment. Look at Switzerland, look at Norway, look at the Scandinavian countries, look at the South European countries. They market their heritage, they market their environment, they market their tourism, and then generate the jobs. So they preserve and generate jobs. The Indian model of development would be the best because that is our culture. We are resourceful enough to create a thinking kind of an economy, which is the IT sector, which is hardly polluting. We are resourceful enough to be able to market our heritage, to market our environment, to market our tourism in these matters. And we are also resourceful enough through all our history, the entire Vedic history that goes back to God knows how many thousands of years, of living in communion with the environment and using the environment for our own benefit. So frankly speaking, the real model of development that we should be marketing to the entire world is the Indian model of development, where you live in communion with the environment and use it for your benefit without destroying it. That, to me, is the argument.
दत्ता बाबाचो आर्ग्युमेंट आणि दोतोराचो आर्ग्युमेंट बोथ सिमिलर लायन्सा वयल्यान वतात आनी जेन्ना सस्टेनेबिलिटी हेरिटेज कल्चर अल्टिमेटली जेन्ना टुरिजमाचो विशय येता तेन्ना ह्योच गजाली घेवन आमकां मुखार वचचें पडटा. हाव आर यू लुकिंग एट इट? कारण टुरिजमाचेर आरोप जायत असतात, सीआर देळाच्या बाबतींत आरोप जायत असतात आनी खंय तरी ती इंडस्ट्री खंय तरी एक इविल आनी डेविल कशी लोक पळोवपाक लागल्यात. हाव आर यू लुकिंग एट?
This is very relevant at this moment. What Dr. Oscar said, we should progress, but at the same time with respect for environment. This is very pertinent to Goa right now because we are trying to move into hinterland. The soul of Goa lives in the villages. The body might live in the cities. So this is a time when we are taking a big step inwards. And this is the time that planning has to be done, and there is a master plan that is coming up with there are a lot of people who are already selected to give their opinions, and there'll be a lot of other people who will be contacted for their inputs. And this is very important because we have to go in a planned manner. We have to remember that when we are going into the hinterland, we have to go there with respect because we are going in the house of nature. Nature is created by the good Lord, and we cannot improve on it. What we have to do, we have to take this, the nature and use it for our betterment without concretization. Progress and development does not mean concretization. We leave the natural beauty and the environment and the nature as it is. We are not going to get anything out of it. That's not going to fill our stomachs. We have to use it without destroying it to seek employment, to get employment, and to have a square meal on our table. This has happened in the Central, I've seen in the Central American countries and some of the South American countries. They have moved in these lines and they have been quite successful. You have to be a little patient. It's not that fast, but it bears fruits.
I'll come back to you, but
Yes.
interestingly, the next person who is sitting next to you, Aaron Lobo, who has done a lot of study in terms of marine biodiversity. And when you talk about tourism, focusing completely on beaches, marine biodiversity is one aspect which can suffer. How are you looking at it?
I think there's a sort of a bipolarity, almost a schizophrenia with the way we would look at the land or the terrestrial ecosystem, whereas the way we look at the sea. I mean, to just set the context right, for every tiger that we have roaming our forest, we have sharks that swim our sea. For every deer that grazes on our slopes, a gaur that grazes our slopes, we have certain herbivorous fish like rabbitfish, what we call barnoshi, that are feeding off the rocks. And similarly for all the scavengers, the rats, we have got shrimp and other stuff. But the way we look at the sea is one as a sole provider for food or for exploitation. So it's an open access resource. You can go anywhere, you can fish anywhere you like, whereas every sort of hectare of the land space is governed or controlled in some form or the other. So when you start off with this basic mindset, like, we really loathe the slaughter of wildlife. For example, when we talk about killing tigers, it enrages all of us. I mean, killing of frogs, it gets people wild. But you talk to an average Goan, if there's less fish in the market and he's really upset, And you can see tons of fish, coming to the market. And fish is also a wild resource, and it's a finite wild resource. And this is something that we have to realize. But the thing is, very often our drivers are not local. They come from elsewhere. Like, for example, the whole trawling industry for a while was being controlled by market forces arising from somewhere totally different. So what we might be doing here has got nothing to do with the people here or local people degrading it. It comes from outside. And I think we have to understand all these factors. It's local as well as global, and I think sort of matching these and getting to understand that is quite key. And I think tourism, obviously, so Goa is one of the few states wherein tourism, actually uses a fair share of the fish consumption. But a good amount of fish actually goes for other purposes, which I'll talk about later. I think there's time for discussion. So,
Nitin, you are probably the industry man. परत अनेक डेव्हिल म्हणून पळयतात. सदांच आंदोलनां जातात. मागीर SEZ जावं खंयचेय जावं टिकाय जाता भरपूर. हो जो विशय आहा नो फर्दर तूं कसो पळयता?
Unless until we have good environment, a good clean environment, I don't think anyone would come to Goa. So it's very important. We have to maintain this environment. Absolutely, that should not be compromised. But often I've seen there are activism fair activism is perfectly understandable because we are also Goans, we also want to live here and absolutely we don't want to compromise the standards. But sometimes in the guise of environment, some activists, especially in the local villages, I've seen they will wait till the unit comes up to a level, especially housing will come to a level, then they will start attacking just with the guise of making money. I'm not saying across, but at least 30-40% cases. That is what pains me. There is corruption. I've seen even some sarpanchas, some politicians involved in this racket. I think environment should not be used for compromising. Once you oppose, it should be opposed. There should not be a second thought on that. We need to preserve is our commitment, but at the same time, there should not be a bargain. Industries are also choosy about a better quality of life for their workers, for everything. If you see in last 10 years or even so many years, hardly any polluting industry has come, and we as a chamber also have perfectly opposed. SEZ was not an issue linked to the environment. SEZ was an issue linked to the land allotment. And often SEZ concept got bulldozed because the land allotment issue was not distinguished. SEZ as a concept, even country is doing very well. And unfortunately, when we were talking about it, people were not ready to understand what we are talking about it. Land allotment got mixed up. So that should be opposed, but at the same time, you need to see what is best sustainable for the state. Employment has to be created, a good, as Dr. Roshkar said, that there has to be sustainable model of development and there is absolutely no compromise on that.
त्याला दोन मुद्दे काढल्यात नितीन. एक पहिलो म्हळ्यार खंय तरी एक्टिविजमाक तातूंत भितर बार्गेनिंग जाता, ब्लॅकमेलिंग जाता तो. आनी दुसरी गजाल तो म्हणटा की अल्टिमेटली सस्टेनेबल मॉडेल आसपाक जाय. तुमी कामगारां बरोबरय काम करतात. तुमकां दिसता तुमकां ह्यो गजाली सगळ्यो पडटात?
Pramod, before answering that question, I would just like to open up on something about the ethos of India as I see it. We are in the period of Dasra Diwali. In Dasra, traditionally in North India, with nuts and bolts, they build up effigies of Ravan. For Diwali in Goa, with nuts and bolts, we build up effigies of Narkasur. And the ethos of India is Satyameva Jayati, the victory of truth over falsity, the victory of good over evil. So on the day of Dasra, on the day of Diwali, we burn those effigies. What is happening in our country in the name of development is that we are building these effigies and we are keeping them. And therefore, whether it is the workers, or whether it is the farmers, or whether it is intellectuals, or industry, or tourism, we get, आमी ते जोताक बैल कशे बांदले पळय, आमी बांदून थिंगाच उरले to that effigy. Because we are now venerating that effigy. We are not realizing that it is there amongst us. So therefore, I will come to that first question which you put to Dattabab. Have we reached the point of thus far and no further? Question is, if this question has at all arisen, it means that at least some portion or some sections of the society truly and honestly thinks that we have reached that point. Whether they are right or wrong is a different question, but they think that we have reached that point. Maybe science and technology may be able to push those limits a little further. But if some section of the society thinks that we have reached that point, then I think it is worth a debate. And two things about that debate.
Quickly.
Yes. What is it that brought us thus far? And what is it that we have to do not to proceed
Okay.
no further?
I'll take this point and I'll move forward because my next panelist is Mr. Partha Banerjee, who represents one of the biggest mining firms in Goa. And right now, if you see the whole scenario, you are probably considered by environmentalists as the biggest devil. And both these points raised by Talman, how are you going to reply to them?
Well, if I quote a few statistics by few of the institutions around the world today, in some of the advanced world, mineral dependence is in the tune of astonishingly high, in the tune of some 25 ton per annum per capita. Now this includes mineral, metals, fossil fuel, everything for the lifetime. Now this probably raises a bigger question that how much is too much for the society? But that is a